told my dad to open the door. He had no idea what was waiting. My mom died 14 months ago. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She fought for 11 months after the diagnosis, which the doctor said was longer than most. That was her. Stubborn and full of grace right up until the very end. My dad took it the way tall trees take lightning. He didn't fall immediately. He just stood there, hollowed out from the inside, and nobody could quite tell how long before he'd come down completely. He owns a ranch about 3 hours outside the city. Cattle, horses, a few goats my mom had insisted on keeping because she thought they had personality. He has workers, good people who've been with him for years, who kept everything running when he couldn't. But running the ranch and actually living are two different things. They'd call me sometimes, his foreman mostly, just to say your dad walked the fence line again for 2 hours and didn't speak to anyone. Or that he'd sat in her garden in the dark until someone noticed the light was off and came to check on him. He wasn't recovering. He was just continuing. There's a difference. I'm 28. I live in an apartment in the city, work in project management, and I'm absolutely not equipped to fix grief. Nobody is. But I had been doing a lot of reading, a lot of thinking, and eventually I walked into an animal shelter on a Thursday afternoon. I came home with a 10-week-old yellow Labrador retriever who was, immediately and without apology, the most chaotic creature I had ever encountered. I named him Biscuit. He destroyed one of my shoes within the first hour. The plan took me 3 weeks to set up. I called my dad and told him I wanted him to visit, that I needed help with something around the apartment. Framed it practically because he responds better to being needed than being worried over. He agreed after some convincing. When he pulled up outside my building on a Saturday morning, he looked thinner than I remembered, and his eyes had that distance in them that I'd grown used to seeing and hated every time. He hugged me longer than usual. Neither of us mentioned it. I'd hidden Biscuit at my neighbor's place for the day. She was delighted to help and sent me approximately 40 photos, because my dad needed rest more than he needed surprises. He slept most of the afternoon, and I sat in the living room listening to him breathe through the wall, grateful he was at least doing that. Dinner was simple. Pasta, bread, the salad he always made my mom make, but I'd learned to put together myself. He ate more than I expected. We talked about the ranch, about a horse that had been giving the vet trouble, about the goats my mom had loved. He smiled once, briefly, when I mentioned them. It landed in my chest like something precious and fragile. After dinner, I told him I had something to show him in the guest room. He gave me a look. The dad look, slightly suspicious, slightly amused despite himself. "What did you do?" he said. Not a question. "Just open the door," I said. He stood in front of it for a moment, then he turned the handle. Biscuit had been waiting on the other side. I'd slipped him in through the window off the fire escape while my dad was washing his hands, a feat that required more athleticism than I'd like to admit. The second that door opened, 75 pounds of yellow puppy launched directly into my father's chest. My dad stumbled back a step. Biscuit had both front paws on his shoulders and was licking his face with the kind of commitment that suggested he had been waiting his entire short life for this specific person. My father started laughing. I had not heard him laugh in 14 months. It came out of him rough and surprised, like something that had been stored somewhere and forgotten. He grabbed that dog with both arms and held him, and Biscuit wiggled and whined and licked his ear, and my dad just stood there in the hallway laughing and holding a puppy, and I had to look at the ceiling for a moment because I am not going to cry in front of my dad if I can help it. "What is his name?" my dad finally managed. "Biscuit." He looked at me over the dog's head. Something moved across his face. Grief and love and gratitude all tangled together in the way they always are. "Your mother," he said quietly, "would have had a lot to say about that name. She would have loved him," I said. "Yeah." He scratched Biscuit behind the ears, and the dog groaned with pleasure and collapsed dramatically across his feet. "Yeah, she would have." He ended up sleeping with Biscuit that night, the dog curled against his side like he'd always been there. 2 weeks later, my dad asked if he could take him to the ranch. Biscuit lives there now. He follows my dad through every fence line, sleeps at the foot of his bed, and has made friends with the goats my mom loved. My dad called me last week, first thing in the morning, just to tell me about something funny Biscuit had done. He sounded like himself.